The winter of 1312 arrived with a vengeance, howling through the narrow streets of Ravenshire like God's own fury. Snow piled against the ancient cathedral's buttresses, where generations of the faithful had come to worship and kings had knelt in prayer. But beneath the soaring arches and stained glass that filtered the weak winter light lay secrets known to few. Knight Commander Kendrick Quillan stood at the altar, his weathered hands clasped in prayer. At 42, his once golden hair now carried streaks of silver, and the years of duty had etched deep lines around his eyes. His armor remained in the armory on days like this, replaced by simpler garments befitting his station as guardian of St. Edmund's Cathedral. The common folk knew him only as the stern protector of the holy place, a man who had forsaken marriage to serve God and King. What they didn't know was that Kendrick's true duty lay beneath their feet. "The North Passage needs reinforcement," he murmured to Brother Thomas, the elderly monk who shuffled beside him through the nave. "The rains have weakened the mortar." "God will provide," Brother Thomas replied, the same answer he gave to all earthly concerns. Kendrick nodded politely but knew God expected men to do their part. For 23 years, he had served as one of the guardians, an ancient brotherhood sworn to protect what lay in the chambers beneath St. Edmund's. A sacred duty passed from night to night since the First Crusade, when the relics had been brought to English soil. The duty had consumed his life, leaving no room for family or love. A true guardian gives all to his sacred trust. The relics must remain protected, no matter the cost to oneself. These words, spoken by his predecessor on his deathbed, had become Kendrick's creed. He had come to believe that sacrifice was the only noble path, that to desire more was to fail in his sacred obligation. As dusk fell and the cathedral emptied of worshippers, Kendrick lit a single lantern. In the quiet hours, when even the monks retired to their dormitory, he would descend to inspect the hidden chambers. This night, however, brought something unexpected. A woman knelt at the side altar dedicated to St. Catherine, her head bowed in prayer. Her cloak, though simple, was made of fine wool, and the hands clasped before her showed no signs of common labor. As he approached, meaning to inform her that the cathedral was closing, she raised her face. "Sir Knight," she said, rising, "I had hoped you would appear." Kendrick's hand moved instinctively to where his sword would hang. "You know me, my lady." "By reputation only." She lowered her hood, revealing auburn hair bound in a simple style. "I am Beatrice Fairhold, sister to Lord Edmund Fairhold of North Castle." Kendrick knew the name. Lord Fairhold was a powerful baron whose lands bordered the cathedral's holdings. "The cathedral closes at vespers, Lady Fairhold. I must ask why you linger." Her grey eyes held steady. "Because what I seek cannot be discussed in daylight hours, when too many ears listen." "And what do you seek?" "The truth about what lies beneath these stones." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "About the chamber that doesn't exist in any mason's plans, yet has been guarded by knights like you for centuries." Kendrick's blood ran cold. "You speak of fancies, my lady. Perhaps the winter air has—" "My grandfather was Godfrey Fairhold," she interrupted. "Before he died, he told me he once served among your number. That when he was injured in the Holy Land, he was entrusted with returning something precious to this cathedral." The name struck Kendrick like a physical blow. Sir Godfrey was indeed recorded in the secret chronicles kept below. But his service had ended 90 years ago, long before this woman could have known him. "Your grandfather would be well over 100 years old," he said carefully. "Not my father's father, but my mother's," she clarified. "He lived to 93 years, dying when I was 16. He made me promise to seek out the guardian of St. Edmund's when danger came again." "What danger?" "Men have been asking questions in the village. Foreign men with gold to spend and swords hidden beneath their cloaks." She pulled a small object from her sleeve, a coin of Byzantine origin, stamped with symbols Kendrick recognized with dread. "They seek what lies below." The ancient medallion in her hand was one carried by all who had served as guardians. Seeing it in her possession violated everything Kendrick had been taught about secrecy. "Come," he said tersely. "Not here." He led her to a small chamber off the north transept, where the cathedral's accounts were kept. After securing the heavy door, he turned to her. "If what you say is true, Sir Godfrey betrayed his oath by speaking of these matters." "He betrayed nothing," she replied fiercely. "He prepared a bloodline to assist when the time came, as it has now. The brotherhood of knights grows thin, Commander. How many serve with you now? 3? 4? When once there were 20. Her accuracy unsettled him. There were indeed only 4 guardians remaining, himself, Sir Roland, Sir William, and young Sir Geoffrey, newly sworn last Michaelmas. "Whatever you believe you know, it cannot involve you," Kendrick insisted. "This duty belongs to anointed knights, not women." Her lips curved in a faint, challenging smile. "Yet who better to hide in plain sight? Who arouses less suspicion than a noble woman making donations to the cathedral? My grandfather prepared me for this moment since childhood." "For what moment?" Kendrick demanded, his patience fraying. "The return of the Seekers." She leaned forward. "Men who have hunted the relics since they left Constantinople. Men who believe the power of the true cross fragment, the crown of thorns shard, and the spear tip that pierced Christ's side should belong to them alone." Kendrick felt the foundations of his carefully ordered world begin to crumble. The existence of these relics was known only to the guardians and the Bishop of Ravenshire. The specific nature of the 3 most sacred items had never been recorded outside the hidden vault. "How do you know this?" he whispered. "My blood carries the obligation," she answered simply. "As does yours. The question is whether you will accept help from unexpected quarters, or cling to old ways that may no longer serve." Before he could respond, the cathedral bell rang once, an unscheduled toll that served as warning between the guardians. Someone approached who did not belong. "Come," Kendrick said, making a swift decision he prayed he wouldn't regret. He moved a wooden panel behind the counting table, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Beatrice followed without hesitation, her sure-footed descent suggesting this was not her first time navigating hidden passages. The thought troubled him deeply. 3 levels below the cathedral, past false walls and water-filled passages designed to deter intruders, they reached a small antechamber cut from the living rock. A heavy iron-bound door stood before them, illuminated by a single torch in a wall sconce. "Wait here," he instructed, but she shook her head. "The medallion," she reminded him, holding out the Byzantine coin. "It's half the key." Kendrick stared in disbelief. "How could you possibly know that?" "Try it," she challenged. With reluctance, he removed his own medallion from around his neck. Together, the 2 pieces fit into a recessed pattern on the door, one that had always required 2 guardians to open. The tumblers clicked, and the massive door swung silently inward on well-oiled hinges. Beyond lay the heart of his life's purpose, the hidden chamber of St. Edmund's. Tall shelves of stone lined the walls, holding reliquaries of gold, silver, and ivory. Ancient texts secured in locked cases contained wisdom preserved from Alexandria and Constantinople. But at the chamber's center, upon an altar of white marble, rested 3 reliquaries more precious than all the others combined. Beatrice gasped softly, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the ever-burning lamps that had been maintained here for centuries. "You should not be here," Kendrick said, though the conviction had begun to leave his voice. "No woman has entered this chamber since it was consecrated." "Yet here I stand," she answered. And your sacred duty remains uncompromised. Before he could reply, footsteps sounded on the stairs they had descended. Sir William appeared, his sword drawn, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "Commander!" "They've breached the north entrance," he gasped. "Sir Geoffrey is dead. Sir Roland holds them at the chapter house stair, but there are at least 8. "The Seekers?" Beatrice asked. William's eyes widened at her presence. "Who is this woman? Why have you—" "There's no time," Kendrick cut him off. "We must move the sacred relics." "The emergency repository, they know of it," William interrupted. "They knew of all our defenses, as if they had read our very chronicles." Kendrick's mind raced. After centuries of safeguarding, would the relics be lost during his watch? The shame of such a failure would follow his soul into eternity. "There is another way," Beatrice said quietly. "A passage my grandfather helped create but never recorded. It leads to Fairhold Land, to a chapel built to receive these treasures if St. Edmund's ever fell." William's sword point rose. "Commander, this is treachery. She cannot be trusted." "Lower your blade," Kendrick ordered. "Lady Fairhold bears Sir Godfrey's medallion. She knows things only a confidant of a guardian could know." "Or things told under torture," William countered. "Sir Godfrey has been dead for decades. His medallion could have been taken." "And the exact nature of the 3 sacred relics?" "The mechanism of the door." Kendrick shook his head. "We have no choice but to trust her." A crash echoed from above, followed by shouting. Their time was running out. "Show us this passage," Kendrick said to Beatrice. She moved to a section of wall that appeared identical to all others, pressed 3 stones in sequence, and revealed a narrow tunnel barely tall enough for a man to walk upright. "It emerges in the forest half a league hence," she explained. "From there, we can reach Fairhold Land by dawn if we hurry." William looked doubtful, but Kendrick had already made his decision. With swift efficiency, they wrapped the 3 most sacred reliquaries in protective cloth and secured them in leather satchels. The remainder would have to be left behind, a grievous loss, but not a fatal one to their mission. As they prepared to enter the passage, Kendrick paused. "One of us must remain to delay them, to make them believe we've taken another route." "I'll stay," William volunteered immediately. "No," Kendrick countered. "You're younger, stronger. You must protect the relics and Lady Fairhold." "Commander, that's an order, Sir William." Kendrick's tone left no room for argument. "The sacred duty is to protect the relics, not any individual guardian." In that moment, as he prepared to sacrifice himself, Kendrick felt a strange clarity. All his life, he had believed duty required the surrender of all personal desire. Yet facing his likely death, he found himself regretting not what he had done, but what he had never allowed himself to experience. Love. Family. The touch of a woman's hand on his face in the quiet hours before dawn. As if reading his thoughts, Beatrice stepped forward. "There's another way. These men want the relics, not revenge. Let them believe they've won." "What do you mean?" William asked. She removed 3 objects from a hidden pocket in her cloak, replicas of the sacred reliquaries, crafted with remarkable skill. "My grandfather had these made. Not to deceive the faithful, but to protect the true relics if this day ever came. She placed them on the altar. They'll buy us time." Kendrick stared at the woman before him, feeling the foundations of his beliefs shift once more. All his training said to trust no one outside the brotherhood, yet here stood someone who had prepared for this moment with more foresight than the guardians themselves. "We all go," he decided. "Together." The journey through the passage was arduous. Centuries of disuse had left it partially collapsed in sections, requiring them to dig through fallen earth and stone. By the time they emerged into the forest, dawn light filtered through the bare winter branches, and all three were exhausted and filthy. 2 more hours to Fairhold Land, Beatrice said, orienting herself by the rising sun. They moved as quickly as their burden and fatigue allowed, staying off the main paths. William took the lead, while Kendrick brought up the rear, constantly checking for pursuers. Between them walked Beatrice, her earlier confidence now tempered by exhaustion, yet her steps remained determined. "Why did Sir Godfrey tell you of these matters?" Kendrick asked as they paused to drink from a stream. "It violates every oath we take." "Because he believed the oaths needed to change with the times," she replied. He saw how the Guardians dwindled, how each generation yielded fewer men willing to surrender their lives to secret duty. He believed the protection of the relics might one day require more than swords, it would require secrecy beyond the brotherhood. "So he chose a woman," Kendrick observed. "Clever. No one would suspect." "He chose his bloodline," she corrected. "He had no sons, only a daughter, my mother. He taught her, and she taught me. We've waited, prepared, maintained the hidden chapel for nearly a century. Without any communication with the brotherhood. Would you have believed us if we'd approached you before now?" she asked. Kendrick had no answer to that. His entire life had been built around rigid adherence to tradition. The idea of a woman, even a noble woman, being entrusted with their sacred knowledge would have seemed heretical only days earlier. By midday, they reached Fairhold Lands. Rather than approaching the main manor, Beatrice led them to a secluded valley where a small stone chapel stood beside a clear spring. From the outside, it appeared to be a typical wayside shrine for travelers, but inside, beneath the simple altar, another hidden chamber waited. Unlike the elaborate vault beneath St. Edmund's, this space was plain and functional, with stone shelves and iron-bound chests. But its defenses were no less impressive: false walls, traps for the unwary, and multiple escape routes. "My grandfather designed it," Beatrice explained as they secured the relics. "He believed simplicity offered better protection than grandeur. Fewer people wonder what lies beneath a humble chapel than a great cathedral." With the relics safely stored, the immediate crisis passed. William volunteered to return to the cathedral to assess the situation and determine if any other guardians had survived. Kendrick remained with Beatrice to guard their precious cargo. In the quiet hours that followed, as they waited in the small caretaker's cottage adjoining the chapel, Kendrick found himself studying her with growing fascination. She moved through the space with the confidence of long familiarity, lighting fires, preparing a simple meal, checking the subtle alarm systems built into the grounds. "You've lived your whole life preparing for this day," he observed as darkness fell once more. "Not my whole life," she corrected, pouring him a cup of mulled wine. "I've also been a daughter, a sister, a healer for the village folk. The sacred duty has been just one thread in my life's tapestry, not the entire cloth." Her words struck him deeply. For 23 years, he had known nothing but his duty. He had visited his family rarely, formed no lasting bonds beyond the brotherhood, loved no woman. The sacred trust had not been a thread in his life but the entire fabric. "You think I've wasted my life," he said softly. "No." Beatrice sat across from him, her face gentle in the firelight. "I think you've lived exactly as you believed you must. But perhaps now you see there are different ways to fulfill the same sacred purpose." "And what happens now?" he asked. "Do you expect to become a guardian yourself?" "I already am one," she replied simply. "As was my mother before me, and her father before her. The only difference is that we never took the formal oath or wore the medallion openly." Over the next 3 days, as they waited for William's return, Kendrick's understanding of his duty underwent a profound transformation. He watched how Beatrice managed both her sacred trust and her connections to the world, receiving visitors from the nearby village who sought her healing skills, maintaining correspondence with allies who knew nothing of her secret role but provided eyes and ears throughout the region. On the fourth day, William returned with grave news. The cathedral's hidden chamber had been ransacked, though the false relics had apparently fooled the seekers for now. So Roland had died defending the chapter house. The bishop had been taken for questioning but later released when he could provide no useful information. The seekers had withdrawn, believing they had obtained their prize. "They'll discover the deception eventually," Kendrick said grimly. "By then, we'll be better prepared," Beatrice assured him. "My network extends beyond Ravenshire. We'll know when they begin searching again." "We?" William raised an eyebrow. "The Brotherhood must adapt or perish," Kendrick said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "Lady Fairhold, Beatrice, has demonstrated that the protection of the sacred relics need not mean isolation from the world. Indeed, her connections may prove our greatest asset. The oaths we swore," William began, "were to protect the relics, not the methods," Kendrick finished. "In changing times, we must change too." In the months that followed, a new order emerged from the ashes of the old. The small chapel became the heart of a new protection network. William journeyed to find the remaining guardians scattered throughout England, bringing them into the new fellowship. Kendrick remained with Beatrice, learning the arts of secrecy and subtlety that her family had perfected over generations. And in the quiet evenings, as they worked side by side transcribing ancient texts and creating new protocols, something unexpected blossomed between them. A connection that began in crisis deepened into respect, friendship, and eventually, love. One midsummer evening, as they walked the chapel grounds under a star-filled sky, Kendrick finally spoke of what had grown in his heart. "All my life, I believed devotion to sacred duty meant surrendering all else," he said, taking her hand. "I thought love was a distraction that would weaken my resolve." "And now?" she asked, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Now I understand that love doesn't diminish duty, it strengthens it. Gives it purpose beyond blind obedience." He touched her cheek gently. "You've taught me that protecting what is sacred need not mean sacrificing what makes life worth living. A lesson my grandfather tried to teach the Brotherhood long ago," she smiled. "That the sacred and the human heart need not be enemies." Their marriage that autumn united more than two people. It sealed a new covenant between old ways and new. The bishop, now aware of the secret network but not the specific location of the relics, blessed their union in a private ceremony attended by the remaining guardians and Beatrice's family. The hidden chamber beneath the ancient cathedral remained empty of its most sacred treasures, but not abandoned. Over time, less valuable relics were returned, maintaining its appearance while the true holy objects remained in the chapel's protection. The Brotherhood expanded cautiously, accepting not just knights but scholars, healers, and craftsmen who brought diverse skills to their sacred mission. And if the common folk of Ravenshire wondered why the stern knight commander now smiled more readily, or why Lady Fairhold's healing visits often brought her husband along, they asked no questions. Some secrets, after all, were sweeter for remaining unspoken. Years later, when their eldest son reached his 10th year, Kendrick took the boy to the hidden chapel at dawn. "Today you begin to learn our family's true purpose," he said, placing his hand on the lad's shoulder. "Not just as knights or nobles, but as guardians of something precious." "Like the stories Mother tells?" the boy asked eagerly. "Those stories are just the beginning," Kendrick smiled. "The true tale is about how duty and love can strengthen each other when we have the wisdom to let them." As they descended the hidden stairs together, Kendrick felt a profound gratitude for the path his life had taken. The sacred relics remained protected, as they had for centuries. But now their guardianship was enriched by something the old brotherhood had never imagined possible, a legacy of both devotion and love, passed from one generation to the next like the most precious relic of all.